take a seat back here. Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Alamo Drafthouse. My name is Jeremy Ponafala. I'm a gaffer grip. We're here to present or talk tales of G&E. Here are the other panel members. Feel free to introduce yourself, and we'll start with that.
Hey, I'm Jason Mitchell. I'm a gaffer, grip, whatever you want to do, from the Richmond area.
My name is Taylor ROESCH. I'm a gaffer. Used to be DC based, but Virginia mainly, anywhere in Virginia. I mean, I'll work anywhere, but that's where we're based. Been doing this for 12 years now, so yeah. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. My name is Lauren Scott. I work grip and electric. Baltimore local. I've been grip and electric, been working for like a year or two now. I've been working in the film industry for 5 or 6 years.
Hi, I'm Stephen Lyons. Generally work as a cinematographer, sometimes as a director cinematographer, but have sort of had the pleasure of having better people than me gaff and key, but occasionally I'm sort of forced to do my own stuff when it gets really small. So hopefully a little bit of mixed experiences, some better than others.
Hey, you were the gaffer on my first project.
Oh man, what was that?
Secrets of the Founding Fathers.
Oh yes, I remember that vividly.
I didn't even know what an Apple box was.
Well, here's a quick anecdote, is that gas should always be put in a red gas can. Occasionally people that suppress fires and deal with stuff will put water in a gas can, and in the middle of the night, under urgency, that water gas can will end up in the generator. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Wasn't him, wasn't me, so. Yeah, that caused a little bit of chaos.
Yep. I had a guy bring me, I sent a PA out to get gas one time. He came back with diesel, and diesel went into a gas generator. That was an interesting one.
Certainly changes the shoe, doesn't it?
It's not easy to turn those off. Once they start going, it's just like, yeah.
So that seems to be like one of the things common in G&E is, things arise, problems arise, and that's all departments, but we generally have to just roll with the punches, and something like that, gas, it's like it could become like a 30-minute problem if not caught, or an hour or 2 hour, but what are some other common things that you guys see that frequently arise to maybe stress you out a bit, and then what's something that you do to overcome that?
I mean, I think so much of it ends up like situational, right?
Yeah.
Where you look at a call sheet for like the beginning of a day, right? And you're like, oh, so we're shooting the day exterior at the end of the day, but the call time starts at 10 a.m. Right. Like, okay, this is gonna be interesting. It's like things you can kind of see ahead of time. Like, this might work, this might not work.
Right.
And then, the really good ones can plan out an alternate ahead of time if they have the time. But yeah, I guess it's like being good at predicting those situations ahead of time. Mm-hmm. I wouldn't say I'm very good at it, but
yeah, I would say also just that rolling with the punches, like half the job is just being able to take a breath and solve the problem, right? Like.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's a lot of the film industry. Like any position in the film industry is just troubleshooting all day long.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's always problems that come up, but you gotta think quick on your feet and be flexible and work with what you got in front of you.
True. I'd throw out one thing too, that if they're sister departments, camera, lighting, grip, they all act in concert. So ideally there's fantastic communication. You can go the whole day, never talk to hair, never talk to makeup or props, but the 3 departments work as one. And I think the one thing is, as you get up into management level, realize that everybody only has a certain capacity of energy and then a certain capacity of focus. So the thing is, what you're asking at the 12th hour of the day on a 100-degree day probably isn't going to be processed quite as well as the first hour, especially if you're shooting a studio. So I think all of us can speak to, like, at some point you just wear down. And communication tends to get sloppier, performance gets sloppier, And then one of the big things in this industry too is, can you do a 16-hour day and still drive home?
Yeah.
Can you do it safely? So I think that's the one point I would push to everybody. And if you're watching this years later on video, that, you know, again too, there's, at the end of the day, everything has to end successfully with no harm done. And I think that's a topic that really can't be beaten enough, because again too, everybody has their limit. I was just on a shoot where it's like 100 degrees, had an actor who was probably 60 years old, wasn't wearing a heavy costume, but he came up to me. And I wasn't in the capacity to say yes or no. And he goes, "Are we about done?" I said, "Do we need to be done?" And he goes, "I think I'm done." And I said, "Okay, I think I see heat issues coming up." And I was like, "You know what, just let's take a break. I'm not going to push for anything more." And luckily, everybody kind of understood, and we let the guy go. So it's like, we got what we got. Would we have liked more? Absolutely. But at the same point, you know, he looked a little worn out in my eyes. And I think that's a big thing too, is we're not just dealing with gear. We're not just dealing with script. We're actually kind of looking at each other as well, just to make sure we're all kind of performing as we need to be.
Yeah, I think safety is like a huge thing, especially in the G&E department, to touch on, because we are dealing with such heavy gear, electricity, like large flows of electricity, and also like weight balancing things, like kind of engineering minds, things like that. So I think safety is like definitely something we can touch on, and I'm sure there's a lot of stories there too we could tell about things that went wrong, how we fixed it, or thought ahead of time and like saved ourselves on that, you know. If anyone has something to share on that.
I had the pleasure of having a clamp break, allowing a light to almost fall on an actor's head. But even though the AD was freaking out and was angry at us because we apparently didn't do our job right, I was like, "See that light? It's hanging from the safety chain like it's supposed to." And nobody got hurt. It's fine.
Yep.
There's a gaffer that he's from LA that came to town for a project and was telling us a story that he was operating camera on a some bad TV show, and they were gonna blow up a van, right? So this is second unit. He's operating camera, and so when you're gonna blow up a van, they debolt the car and put it back together with zip ties and other things to make that, you know, to make it look cinematic, right? And so he's, you know, a couple hundred feet away at his camera position, and the grips show up and they start building, like he's got plexi in front of him, and they show up with plywood and start building this box around him. He's like, "Guys, come on, what? I'm fine." Like, and the grips are just like, "Shut up, I'm doing my job, and you know, you can't tell me that I'm not building this platform around you." So they go to shoot it. They blow up the van, and the headrest comes up in the air, and the two spikes land right above his head.
Wow.
In the plywood. And he thinks about it all the time. He's like, because we were blowing stuff up on the show that we were working on, and he's like, whatever it is, just like, put something between you and the explosion.
Yeah.
He's like, "I know it's fun to watch, but no matter where you are, just put something, you know, like in a building, just around a corner." It's like, it's not worth it. It's not that cool.
Everyone who can is taking behind the scenes video anyway, so you'll get to see it from there.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely always good to take that extra step despite someone's resistance. You know, just do your job. And
Yeah.
it makes all the difference. Clearly for him, so.
Yeah, and it's important too to have, I guess, like have grounding in your own beliefs and in like you're saying, like this guy's like, "Guys, like don't even worry about it, blah blah blah," and you're like, "No, we're gonna do it anyway." And I feel like that's a very like grip thing to do. Like, shut up, we're gonna do it, because taking that extra moment to either look at your surroundings or build that extra extra protection, things like that, it does save lives, and it's extremely important. And we're pretty hard-headed people, so
Yeah, there's just certain things that productions or directors or somebody will try to do that
Right.
no matter what their rank is, you just have to step in and be like, "Look, no. We're all
Or
just
they're
going to walk
rushing
off
you.
this set if you're going to try to do this." We're like, this has to be done this way. It's not
That's right.
safe. Yeah.
That's right.
Yep, especially on the time restraints, because that's a big thing. It's like where you may get lazy or you may just skip a process or a step because, you know, everyone's always checking their watches. You're always getting checked in on with the ADs or anybody from the AD team. But following through is just the way it has to go. So
Yeah, it's a good thing this has happened, but a lot of times if we're starting to feel that pressure, and they're like, this is taking too long. I'm just like, it's a safety thing. It's got to happen. And then they have to immediately like give us the space to make it right. Because if something goes wrong after that and we didn't do it right, they know the ramifications of that. So
That's right.
Another little trick is every time they say, how long is this going to take? It's going to take 5 minutes.
always
It's going to take 5 minutes. 5 minutes from now, it's just, don't worry,
take
it's
5
fine. We'll
minutes.
get it done. It's going to take 5 minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
I have a question. There's always that saying of like, the side joke of like, oh, first day on set. Can each one of you sort of tell me about your first day on set, if you remember? Of any film set, really.
I can give you not the first day. I'd been working for probably 5 years or so at that point, but it was actually on turn.
okay.
I finally get on this big union set. It was like the first time I was on a set, and on a big set. I've been doing indie stuff, and it's a night exterior. They've got like 100 extras out in this area, and I'm helping these guys take apart this big camera crane that was on a dolly. Well, I'd never worked with this crane before, so I'm helping them. I see how they're taking each section off, and I'm like, okay, I got it down. And I go and I take another section. I take another section. I didn't know that the very last section where it connects to the pivot point comes apart differently. So we're working. There's probably 200, 300 people. The whole cast and crew is like 15 feet away from this thing. They're rehearsing. And I unleash this clip. The tube goes one way. I go the other way. This aluminum tube hits the ground. Dung, 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 dung. I've landed on top of the dolly, and I'm like all sprawled out on the dolly, just sliding down the dolly track. And 300 people are just staring right at me.
Were you okay?
And my ego was bruised, but otherwise I was
Physically.
fine.
Emotionally. My first day, it was my second day, actually, technically. But it was like, I was still in college, I was in DC, and I was PAing. And like, I don't know, I'm like still learning walkie lingo and stuff like that. And I was like in the crowd of background, so I was like pretty far away from village and everything, thankfully. But when the director or whoever yelled action, I also yelled action, not realizing that like background has a separate call. I'm not supposed to say that. And that was embarrassing, but then I just like kind of like put my head down and realized my wrongdoing.
I was interning at a company in Virginia Beach and answered an ad for unpaid PAs for this History Channel, docudrama, Secrets of the Founding Fathers, produced by Kevin Hirschberger. And so I answer the call, and he says, yeah, we'd love to have you. So I show up, and there's two other PAs, and I'm the biggest PA. And so they're like, all right, you're now in the grip department.
Yes.
And
That's how it started.
yeah. So it was Steve Lyons and Jimmy Ray, I think working out of your trailer.
Yeah.
And I didn't know anything, because I had just been with editors at this production company. And so like I wasn't even good to like go get stuff. It's like I need an Apple box. I'm like, I don't know.
I'll say to your credit though, it's that I think immediately, because so a lot of jobs get undercrewed, and with undercrewing becomes like, if the expectations drop to meet the crewing level, you make it work. Well, these were industrious German filmmakers that just didn't know how to like say no. So everything was huge. They were making Citizen Kane on every shot. And it became like, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but I always phrase it this way. It's like, carry 2 sandbags, 100 yards. So you got 50 yards to the set, 50 yards back. Well, that's not a big deal. But when you do it 10 times, this becomes huge. You're just physically worn, and you haven't even gotten the shot off yet. So when he shows up, it's like, all right, I'm ready. And it's like, oh, he's actually kind of making us look bad because he's outpacing these two old guys. And I think that's the thing, too, is that you can tell people when they're going to succeed in the industry because they jump in with an enthusiasm. And that's the thing, too, is that it's real easy to get jaded in this industry because, you know, if you have a spouse, you're going to miss dinners, you're going to miss school plays, you're going to miss a lot of stuff. And the thing that I tell everybody starting out is just make sure you love this enough to the point where when other parts of your life are sort of in a little bit of chaos, that this was the right decision. Because it is. It's like, you know, night shoots sound really fun until you realize that you've got to shoot till 4 a.m. and have to
15 days
get
straight.
Yeah, exactly. And you're like, I haven't seen anybody in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
That was my favorite part working on turn was I didn't like the FU Fridays, but when we had our call time was like 2 p.m., right? You get to like 9 or 10 o'clock at night on a Friday night, you see actually who's essential to making what we're shooting. All of a sudden, the people in Video Village thin out.
Yeah.
There's like, oh, okay, this is how many people need to be here right now. But the one thing that I think in this industry happens a lot is you hear the phrase like fake it till you make it.
Yeah.
And that was the first thing that Steve told me. He's like, if you don't know something, don't say you know it. Like, just tell me you don't know it.
Yeah.
Because for us, that's a way to get yourself or somebody else very badly injured. So like there's never any pressure put on somebody that doesn't really know something because we know the ramifications of that attitude. So.
Well, to throw out too, and that's the thing, I do feel like nobody got in this industry that didn't receive some sort of mentoring. So there is a pay it back mentality.
Big time.
But at the same time, everybody's a crew. So there's, like I worked on a shoot down in Williamsburg and it was for Busch Gardens. So I was gaffing it. I'm not your typical union gaffer. So there could have been some questions of like, why is this guy doing it? Luckily, the key, who's literally just salt of the earth, fantastic guy, he did a huddle. And I'll never forget this. He goes, all right, everybody gather in. We're one team. And he goes, nobody falls today. Nobody fails today. We're one team. If you see something happening somewhere, don't criticize, jump in and help. And I got to say, it was a huge moment because for the rest of the shoot, it's like this guy set the tone for everything and everything went fluidly.
I love that.
So, yeah, and that's at the end of the day, too, is that, you know, you do have to work with people and the dynamic. And, you know, at some point, you're going to get on each other's nerves. I mean, if you do a 60-hour week and then another 60-hour week, something's going to upset you about the person. But again, too, put it aside and figure out how to, you know, do the job and stuff like that. And I will say, too, that I'm a big believer that in the day with handshakes, if there's any tension, which will happen, everything gets resolved as quickly as possible because people don't behave the same under stress as they would normally. You know what I mean? And there's some scary times when you're 15 minutes away from sunset and everybody's screaming, we still have 3 more shots. And it's like, pick one. And then they're screaming at you. It's like, you don't understand. We don't make our day if we don't get it. And tensions get high. But your ability to bounce back is one of the best skills you're going to have.
Absolutely. I would absolutely emphasize the importance of teamwork because just like y'all started with, we're all learning from each other. My first shoot, I did not know a lot at all. And luckily, the gaffer was super, super down to earth and taught me a lot and was very patient. And from there, it just progressed. But when you get into those 14 hours, 14th hour, 15th hour, everyone's exhausted. You're highly caffeinated. You're highly dehydrated. It's just going to shit or it's not going well. And then you have your team to rely on. You know, they pick you up mentally. They have your back physically. Very, very important to be a crew, for sure.
Yeah, there was a day recently, it was one of those 100-degree days, and we started at like 7 a.m., so it was like cooler in the morning, but like just an hour or two in, it was already brutally hot. And it was my first, you know, strike's going on, so there's not a lot of work happening right now. And it was my first day back on set in like 2 months. And I went down. It was hot, and I was like, I'm going to pass out. Like I cannot pick up another combo stand. Like I need to sit for a sec and like cool off. And there was no hard feelings. It was like, yeah, man, obviously that's something you have to do. Like if your physical health is a problem and like you're going to be hurt, then that's something we got to take care of. And yeah, I just really appreciate it's kind of I feel like, you know, like I said, like I'm newer to this industry. I've only been here 5 or 6 years, but I think there's an upward shift of moving away from like everyone's headstrong, go, go, go. You know, we have to get this done and you're a pawn rather than a person, and moving towards actual cooperation, teamwork in the sense of like individuality as a human and understanding when something is wrong, or that, you know, we also have families at home, we have things at home, and you know, we can help each other out and be understanding in those situations.
Absolutely. So we had a question in the back.
Yeah, I want to ask.
Spot on.
I feel like you all could answer this better than I could. Can you talk about what is the Genie department? What does it do, and what are the different roles in the department?
Sure. So working down from director of photography, then you have the gaffer, and from there it sort of splits into G&E, grip and electric. And I've worked just indie films, so it's not been as specified as the bigger union shows, but it would typically go key grip, grip swing, or best boy. I'm sure some of the other guys can lend to that.
Yeah, I mean, on like the largest level, like let's see. So Wonder Woman 1984 filmed here in DC in 2018, 2019, and took over Landmark Mall when it was still around and converted it into like the 80s, right? So I was in fixtures, right? And fixtures is an electric department in the rigging department, but we work with set decorators. Like, so it like, depending on the scale, you can get so specialized. Like, if you start, like he said, with the two directors, right? Your director of photography, then you have the gaffer, right? And the key grip, who are equals, right? They're keys of their department. On a bigger show, you also have a rigging key grip and a rigging gaffer, and they are department heads as well, right? So they get paid like department heads. Normally all of them will have a best boy or best girl, right? And they're seconds in the department. And then...
Do you want to just explain what the best do?
Sure. So they're in charge of the administration of the work that you're going to carry out. So making lists, procuring gear, handling time cards, getting things ready for the next setup, moving sometimes a couple days ahead or a day ahead to make sure everything is working smoothly. A lot of times, depending on the crew you're on, they're not normally on set, right? They are like on the truck, organizing things. In New York, they're on set a lot more than they are in LA. So it's like, that's still a thing. But so it really, in some ways, like your gaffer then might inform like who your rigging gaffer is. You know, like he might say, I want this guy for my rigging as my rigging gaffer, or this girl. But it's its own department, and the producer can say, well, tough, like I work with this guy. This is my rigging gaffer. So like it's become its own separate department now, almost, even though we work with similar equipment, if that makes sense. What am I missing?
I don't know. Do you want to know like the difference between grip and electric? Is that kind of what you're wondering?
No,
or?
so I work as a camera assistant.
Uh-huh.
I have a friend who knows nothing about Genie,
Mhm.
and I was more like hoping to get more about like how do you guys see what you do? You know, like on like a market product.
If
I
it
was
plug,
saying it's basically like lighting, and you're like helping to also rig stuff. You're like
they're both lighting departments. If it plugs in, it belongs to the set lighting department, right? The grip handles light modification, which means shaping and coloring of light, and then grips also handle camera movement. So dollies, cranes. If you see a guy operating Steadicam, the person that's spotting him is a grip, more than likely.
Also with like special effects if they're doing like rigging a body up, something like that, helping out.
Yeah, Steven, anything I've said or anything
No,
you got to be able to add this?
Spot on. I would throw this out. Won't get into too many stories, but like you're saying, like, so if a gaffer in the electric department add light, they add the light. Grips generally take it away or control, modify it. But there's also a lot of camera movement, but also weird rigging things. So it's like sometimes you're gonna person walks through a door and a bucket of water dumps on them. And it's like, okay, is that a prop thing? Or is that, and it depends on the crew structure. If it's a big TV show, they might have it worked out themselves. You get smaller and suddenly it's like the grips, for better, for worse, become he's mechanical or she's mechanical, they can figure it out. So a lot of times they get thrown tasks that aren't, like you're saying, like building, a shield for pyrotechnics or something like that. And again, that's where a lot of them, I think they communicate well, and to work in the department, especially the higher level, they're way more into engineering. So if you go back historically 200 years ago, blacksmiths probably commanded a much better reputation than we in the 21st century. It's like, oh, they make a horseshoe. It's like, no, the blacksmith made any engineering tool for that town. So your bridge is falling apart. They figure stresses and stuff like this. And that's the way I look at like key grips, is that they're dealing with a lot of things that don't necessarily get appreciated by camera, but they make the behind the scenes work. And, here's like a crazy example. So every filmmaker should love or study Stanley Kubrick. Kidding, but one thing he did, I think it was Full Metal Jacket, he looked at it's like, okay, we're going to have rubble. If we spin the camera, we're going to see dolly tracks. We don't want to see dolly tracks, but we also want to do these 200 and 300 foot yard runs. So him being very innovative and spending a lot of time in production, he's like, why can't we take this little, European car, cut it in half, and turn it into something that 4 grips can push? So they just literally put speed rail, I think, on the back, and you could push the car, but you still had working brakes and a steering wheel. So it's like, that's brilliant. Well, the first time through, I think they cut the roof, and because the roof is a supporting structure of a car, they hit a couple bumps, and I think the entire chassis broke. So it's like, obviously this doesn't work. Get another car, do some welding, and now suddenly you've got a camera dolly that you can push at a fairly good speed, but it's got brakes, so it won't get out of control. I mean, this is a brilliant idea, and obviously he didn't come up with it himself. At some point, who do you call? The grips become the ones that the more valuable they are at innovation, the better they are. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the stuff that we know, if you go back and actually study kind of the roots of Hollywood, camera design was cinematographers that worked for a studio. So some cinematographer in the noir era is like, I want to be able to do this. And they worked with in-house studio people that would machine that item. It still works that way. There's a lot of gaffers and grips out there that have actually invented their own little gear. So that's one thing that's fascinating with the industry. If something doesn't exist, somebody kind of will make a tool to do this one task. Mm-hmm. The question is, it comes down to cost and, can it actually be innovative enough to bring to market and still kind of make it a business venture?
Can it be 3D printed?
There you go, exactly. That's the new frontier.
Yeah, I mean, the key grip on the pilot for Swagger, and then he worked on the first season of Fear of the Walking Dead in Richmond. Richard Mall invented the Max Menace arm, the compound slider that Hudson is now selling, and he's the only grip to have won a technical Oscar.
That's cool. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't realize that. I just used the Max Menace
Really?
the other day, yeah.
I think it's awesome.
I just worked with a guy, I'll throw this out real quick. He's a DP director, but he actually at some point, he wanted a little hostess tray that would go on a car. And he started looking at it and he's like, how come it's supported from the bottom, suction and tension, but it doesn't have a lip to go in the car window? So he started playing around with the idea, built it for himself, ended up going out to California for some job, but he'd send an email. And he said, I love Matthews Studio Equipment. Let's see what they'll do. And sure enough, Matthews was like, hey, do you have time to come by? So he thought it was going to be like a one-on-one with sales rep. Sits down, there's 2 Matthews engineers. And they're like, we're very interested in this. How come we haven't thought about it? And he's like, oh, okay. So they developed it and turned it into a product. So now it actually exists as a Matthews, hostess tray with this modification. So that's kind of cool. It's like one of these things where, again, nobody was asking for it, but him solving his own issue ended up creating a product.
Yeah.
Joe?
So I don't know if this is either offensive or it's a cliche question at this point. Maybe this could be directed towards Lauren, but everyone here. So are you seeing more females join this side of the G&E? Like, or have they already been there? And what's your opinion? Do you think like, oh, they're on the rise, or how's that feel?
In all the features I've worked, there's always been a lady in G&E, and they've all done exceptionally well. They've kept up, 100%.
I've worked probably 10 years ago under a female gaffer that was amazing. She was older, and she'd been doing it since she had to fight to have the ability to not be forced to wear a skirt to work.
Wow. Seriously.
Wait, say that again? She had what?
She'd been
You
around
wanted to,
so
or-
long that she used to be told as a woman, she had to wear a skirt
Wow.
to work to do G&E, and she was like, I'm not climbing ladders in a skirt.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding.
And yeah, I've worked with quite a few women. It does seem like it's happening more and more, which is great. So
Yeah, I mean, the Louise Hernan here in DC, I think she's full-time at NBC now, but she's a gaffer was here when I started and, worked decades before me. And, yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say it's proportional, but it's definitely more than it was, I think there's still a lot of work to be done in those ways, like giving opportunities. But it definitely does seem better. I mean, when I taught last semester at VCU, the students I had there were the most interested were women. So we're asking me questions after class. We're like, hey, I want to, and I've even seen them on projects like on Instagram that, doing like Oakwood art stuff in Richmond, nonprofit that shoots movies. And so, yeah. Trending in the right direction, maybe, is the best way to phrase it.
Yeah, I would just say, like, as a woman working in these parts, like, I definitely don't see as many women working by my side, but I am hoping that's on an upward trend. And it's hard to say because, like, I am new to not to the industry, but like to G&E, and like, I mean, there's obviously the DMV is a pretty small, intimate, like, pile of people. So like everyone kind of knows each other, and like there's definitely a few people we could name offhand that, but I think it's a handful. It's like really just a handful of women that I see compared to, most of the time when I'm looking at a call sheet, it's like it's all men.
There were, I do know of projects where like the project itself is of a sensitive nature about certain. Yeah, so like Jamie Nudd, who's a gaffer in our area, I had seen her just like work on these projects, and they could assemble an all-female crew. Like, so it's possible, right? That there's enough people, but just depending on the size, like you might stretch the limits of how many people we have like in our area. But
yeah, and it does kind of bring an interesting question of conversation about like the morality of if it's not like a sensitive topic, right? Like, is it moral, is it ethical to be like, I only want women on all of the, on every aspect of crew making, and like, is that discriminatory, or is that helping towards a better future or more equal future? And I think that's an interesting topic of discussion that could really go either way.
I think I'd add this too, that, and years back, so if you go back to like the 80s or something like this, so I'm starting out, everyone I encountered in Grip Electric was, a big tough dude. And I don't know whether it's that these categories attracted this, or, and I encourage everybody to do this, grab a stick of banded cable and carry it like 100 feet and then go upstairs. And it's basically like carrying a fire hose. So it's like one of these things where, I did it a couple times and I'm like, oof, camera's looking really nice, you know. Do I want to be electric? So I think there's a self-selection process that I don't think people were told no back then, but the physicality, it was pretty brutal. Same with, you know, grips. You start carrying a Mambo combo stand, you know, none of that's changed. I think the thing is too that maybe people were less likely to ask for help. Like, hey, can I get your assist doing this? So I knew people that would, you know, put a 5K up on a stand by themselves. And it's like, okay, well, you know what? It's probably not smart because if you burn yourself out or hurt yourself, we still got 8 more hours in the day. So I think there's maybe a better camaraderie within departments, between departments, but, you know, to the physicality, you know, we were talking about aperture lights and brand new little LED lights. You know, you can plug into a wall and have kind of the equivalent of what maybe a 5K used to be with big heavy cable and a generator. So there was a knowledge asset required, and you generally couldn't work your way up. You didn't start on day one and then with a year you're a gaffer. It was a much slower progression. Now I will say that you can progress with a lot of it is aptitude. Because, you know, talk to old guys like me and it's like, we need a flicker gag. And I remember doing flicker gags like, okay, just do this with your fingers in front of a light bulb. And people like, for how long? The scene's going to take us 3 hours to shoot. You're kidding me, for 3 hours? But now you can actually get, literally it's pre-programmed into something you got off Amazon. And I'm still blown away with this, that the technology that exists now does, it requires a technical savvy that is not the same technical savvy as years ago, whereas a gaffer had to manage 3 fades of load. There was huge concern about, you know, if you run disproportionate loads, do you hurt the generator? You're going to burn a cable up. What's the set safety of this? But now it's like, can you do this app that does this? And there's so much wireless technology these days too. So
that Secrets of the Founding Fathers project that was my first. There was a night scene. There's a fire, right, and some lights that were kind of, you know, doing the work of the fire that you couldn't see. And as Steve's like, all right, so I just need you to, we got a couple of dimmers. It's like 30 degrees outside, and I'm out the window just like trying to make it look like fire. And then I just, like, I learned what a magic gadget was like a year later, and I was like, I spent like 4 hours just going like this.
yeah,
And
this
it was
is
like
the hazing, man.
I was like, my hands hurt. It's so cold.
I'm sorry.
No, we didn't have a magic gadget. So.
I knew what a magic gadget was, but we just didn't have one.
Yeah.
And we did an effect once that required 3 people operating, I think, 8 just single hand squeezers, flicking things on and off and dimming. And I'm like, this is insane. We had all this cable run in. I'm like, we could just...
But there's a magic to that too, like
Yeah.
visually, like just that image of just like, you know, everyone working together to make this thing happen.
Yeah.
There's bonding happening there.
We did it with fireworks once, where it was to rate voltage. We use a variac, right? So for tungsten lights, you can just bring the voltage down. So we had all these lights set up with different colors and these variacs, and there was like 5 or 6 of us. And to do the firework effect, it's like it starts all the way at 100, you turn it on, and then you dim it, right? And then you turn it off and you bring it back up, right? So you had like 5 people doing this thing where it, you know, has to come out and then dim slowly. And but when it worked, it was like, whoa.
Yeah,
it was really, you know, it was really cool.
You felt like you did something you weren't supposed to do.
Yeah.
You broke it to fix it.
Exactly.
So,
Can you guys tell me sort of this question?
You talked earlier about like the enthusiasm you need, like you really want to be doing this job when it comes to doing it. I was kind of curious your perspective in your department. How much of that satisfaction is bound to that kind of day-to-day lived experience on set versus how much of it comes from the experience of the final product? Like how often do you guys watch films and are like, oh, that's how that shot came out, that's how that scene came out, that's how this series came out?
for most of the stuff I've worked, I've really not even seen it yet. But
Yeah, exactly.
But whenever I see someone that I did work back, it's always a cool moment to, you know, reflect on the experience. And it's like, man, those days were really tough, but we got through it, and we had all these like really cool moments. And I think those moments aid a lot towards the desire to keep doing it. So, for me,
Yeah, I'm similar. I've probably 12 or 13 films I've done now, and I've only seen like 4 of them.
Yeah.
yeah,
Mostly ones I also was a producer on, because it's more about the work for sure for me.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are projects that I'm proud to have been a part of, so they hold more weight. Like The Good Lord Bird is one of my like favorite projects that I've worked on. The book was really amazing. The production was awesome. The cinematographer was like David Lynch's cinematographer. He had done like Blue Velvet, Mulholland Drive. The gaffer had worked on those movies. So it was just like the entire experience was great. And then, was really proud of what they made. So yeah, but most of the time, yeah, it's like,
Miserable.
yeah. I worked on Swagger. I was like, I'm not getting Apple TV. I'm sorry. I can't afford that right now. One day I'll see it.
Yeah, there's definitely something really surreal about like working on something for 6 or 7 months, and like you're finally at the end of it, and like it's gonna be another few months to a year until you actually see anything out of it. But I remember like I did Dope Sick in 2021, and I was on for the whole show of that, and that was my first like full show. I was there for almost every day. Like I moved to go there, everything. It was a whole life-changing experience. And then to be able to actually watch the show afterwards, like, however long, 6 months later, and like remember where I was standing when that shot was taken, and like have the behind the scenes picture that's like almost the exact, not obviously nowhere as cinematic, but like the same as the image that's on the screen. There's something really to that, like really elevating feeling, to see the product that you worked so hard for afterwards.
What a great show to start on. Wow.
Yeah.
I was blown away with it.
Yeah, really incredible. And the team too. Like everyone on that show is, Graham there was on it, and the whole crew is just super kind, super sweet. Like worked together really well, and the final product was amazing, and it was for a really important thing. So
That brings up kind of a question I've always thought about. It's like how the more harmonious the production, does it result in a better project? And I think years back it was, there has to be pain and suffering to create great art. And it's like, I don't know about that. Like, maybe, but maybe not,
Clint Eastwood would beg to differ.
Yeah. Well, look at Apocalypse Now. It's like, it's a great film, but it sounded like, people could have just died at any point in the making of it.
right. Yeah.
Key grip was eaten by a tiger. But I think to your point, too, I think, it's weird. I think some projects you're proud of. Some, at least I do this, I look at like, if we'd had one more take, if we'd had, I wish I had 5 more minutes to pump up the backlight a hair. So I think a lot of it, too, I think some of that, too, is that depending on how you mentally process stuff, you kind of want to make it better and better. But the reality of the situation is like, this is going to be this good because this is what we have. I think one thing for G&E and camera is that the more you light and the more you do stuff, are you stealing time from other stuff? Mm-hmm. So there's always going to be the makeup artist that wants to get in and do a last looks, or the prop that needs to be adjusted. And really, at the end of the day, everybody serves as the director. The director serves as a producer. You need a finished product. And the thing is, the longer you take doing something, the more it takes from. So the thing is, did you only get 2 takes with the actor, but it's the world's best lit scene? And it's like, that's still a failure. So the thing is, it's like that time management is kind of what creates all the pressure. And I think that's the thing is, if everything went as well, you kind of look at it like, hey, that's pretty good. But a lot of times it's like, if we'd only had 1 more hour, or we had this. So I don't know. I think it depends on the project, actually.
I mean, on Turn, being episodic television, it was like we got no time to do half of this, and you just make it work. On Good Lord Bird, Ethan Hawke was also a producer on it, and so we'd go. I'd be helping set up something in the future, and everybody comes to lunch. I'm like, did we get it? And they're like, no, we're gonna go back to it after lunch, or we're not breaking for lunch today because we got to finish this scene. and they could just make those decisions, and having the freedom to like in the moment do that, I guarantee made a better product, you know. And but it was not. It was used judiciously, like when it was necessary. So yeah.
I think the crew feels that too, that every now and then you'll see a performance and you don't know whether to clap, but you're like,
Yeah.
or, I've actually seen people get kind of teary eyed. They're like, wow, I didn't expect this. And it kind of makes me want to work a little harder next day, because not that you're holding back, but it's like, man, I feel like I owe more to this production. It's not a job. Like, wow, this is actually kind of unique to be involved in. That's a great experience, because you're not going to love every project, but hopefully you love them often enough to keep you going and remember why you do this,
Yeah, and I think that's something really important to touch on. Is just like, because I mean, you were right. Like, we wouldn't be here if we didn't love our job, right? There is something there that's kind of keeping us all here, and it might be different for everyone, but like it's a skill while it's also an art, and like we're expressing ourselves every day, and while it's really like hard, arduous work a lot of the time, and we are missing dinners and missing our kids, or whatever it may be, there's something bringing us back. There's something special there, and it's a really niche industry that I'm grateful to be a part of. I think we're all lucky to be here.
Absolutely. When Homeland was shooting in Richmond, right? This was after Sarah Jones had passed, and so there were a lot more concerns about set safety. It was much more in the forefront. And the parent company of Showtime, I can't remember who it was, but had a rule that like you couldn't shoot more than 14 hours elapsed. So that means including lunch, like that's your cutoff, right? So it's like a Friday, we're shooting, it's like 3 a.m, and we're shooting this last scene of the night, and they don't have time to like shoot the reverse. And I'm just like, this is ridiculous. Like you're just like hurt because like we're here.
Yeah.
Let's do it. I don't care. Like go over 14 hours, whatever. We're all here. Like it's going to be another 45 minutes. Like you're just not going to have it. Like we can't come back, you know?
Yeah.
So that's like, those guardrails are great to have in place, and I'm happy they're there, but it's like, man, that hurt. You're just like,
You have heart in it.
yeah.
Yeah, and I like sometimes when they give you the option, like a producer or AD or something will come up to you and say, hey, look, can we go an hour over? Your guy's going to like check with your guys. Is it going to be okay? Like, we're going to give you the ability to say no.
Yeah.
That's a nice thing to do.
Then even then you say no and they do it anyway.
Right. Sometimes. Yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if this is too personal or not. Worst injuries that you've had.
She's like, I don't know if I'm gonna be offensive.
Yeah.
I love it.
I can go if you guys need a minute to think.
Go for it. Go for it. Jump in there.
This wasn't too long ago, actually. Year and a half, maybe. I think somebody must have lubricated the stand or something, and it was raining, because, I have these rubber gloves, I have them on, grab the shaft of the stand, loosen the thing, and then, work myself down, and it's fine. And it's happened a million times. We had an M40 on this, like, Mambo, and I pancaked this light, like, it happened once, and I thought, well, that's odd, that's weird, and nothing happened. But then it happened again, and the stand came down on my whole hand, right at the knuckle, like this. And I felt it crush, and then I rolled out like that, and then it just came down right on my pinky. And it was pretty nasty, but I don't think it was broken or anything.
Yeah, an M40 is like 60 pounds of weight.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's a pretty common one. Is
definitely
just
had
that
that.
the light coming down
Yep.
on your hand. I've been pinched a few times like that.
It took me 15 or so years to actually have that happen.
Ooh.
But
That's why they put that little rubber O-ring there.
yeah. Well, and Matthew says there's Mambos that don't go all the way down.
Yeah,
which is
that's-
nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
Spring in there.
I sort of learned that the hard way. Oh, let's get the other stand. Yeah. Everybody in this industry has been pinched here, and it is like, it is the worst. Because you're just like, oh, it's not that bad.
You
It's
don't
like,
need
oh no, it's debilitating. I'll throw out a little one, and maybe everybody's had this experience. It's not an injury, but one of the worst things I've had happen, you'll laugh at it, is when you're working at nighttime and you see this beautiful backlight, like a big bright HMI, and you see all these spider webs in the forest.
Oh yeah.
And it's awesome because you can dodge them, and it looks beautiful, and there's dew glistening. It's actually it's a photographic moment. Then when you walk the other way and you're walking with the light, you can't see the spider webs, and you end up walking into these, and there's nothing worse than like having this entire web just wrap around you.
The best part is when you're looking at the beauty and then you see someone walk into it.
Stop. So it is one of those things that spiders don't normally freak me out, but I've seen the biggest, toughest people, and you hear this, ah! Like, yeah, okay, just did that too.
Yeah.
Definitely banged my head a couple times for sure. Like going through like some grip jungle of C-stands.
Yeah.
You're trying to rush in and out, maybe fly in a full apple or something. And you're trying to clear out, and then boom, right into a knuckle.
Mm-hmm.
That happens quite a bit actually. So I probably should slow down, but
You get tunnel vision.
yeah, you're trying to get in there. But definitely banged my head a couple times. That's
Well,
no
this-
fun.
Fisher Dolly actually has a little plate on it that says, Dolly may be damaged when objects are crushed. Not when objects possibly crushed might be. It's like, oh, no. When it comes down hydraulically, it is going to destroy whatever's there. Fisher's warning you that the dolly could be hurt as well. And it's actually kind of a huge concern because the some of the weights, jibs, some of that, like one of the worst things I've ever seen is somebody that doesn't know tries to jump in and help dismantle a jib while you have camera weight. And they go to pull off, and, you know, if the length of the jib from the fulcrum has a proportional weight, so it might be, the further out you go, it might be 4 times the weight. So do a 40-pound load, it's, 80 pounds at the other end. So when they pull off 10 pounds, it's the equivalent of dropping 40 pounds of weight. And you're sitting here holding it. And if it's like a 20 or 30-foot jib and suddenly they pull a weight, it'll take you down to the knees. I mean, it's a scary thing, and you're suddenly, and I've had clients sort of try to help. Like, I'm going to help by pulling this weight off, and we'll move quicker. And it's like, you almost killed somebody.
Yeah.
Like, let the expert do it. We'll guide you through it.
So I have one more question before we do the raffle. And this is maybe just a departmental thing. But do you guys have any interesting stories of interacting with a famous person? Or like a lead actor or something like that that is sort of untouchable, maybe?
Yeah, I could tell you one. I was on a film with Chris Cooper, who was trying to think of something. He's
Born.
Born Identity. Yeah. In the
Yeah.
Bourne movies.
So he
Time to Kill.
you got a bunch of them. But he comes on the set. I remembered him from American Beauty. That was a big film that I was really into. So I was like, oh my God, this is so cool. Like, this guy's here. And there was a younger actor, like brand new, like 17 or something. We're pre-lighting, we're doing stuff, and both of these actors for some reason want to be on set when they don't need to be there yet. Well, Chris Cooper comes in, looks around the room, finds the one corner that there's nothing going on in, and he just stands there, and he's out of everybody's way, and he's just chilling. The young actor, we're trying to bring the dolly in through the doorway, and he's doing push-ups in the doorway, like, oh, am I in your guys' way? I just thought that was interesting. I was like, yeah, this is like, that guy over there is a pro. Like,
Yeah, I have two. When I was on Dope Sick, Michael Keaton is like one of the leads if no one has ever seen it. And like the one time he actually like just addressed me specifically, and it was like probably halfway through his run there, and he just goes up to me and goes like, so what do you think? And I'm like, I'm put on the spot. I'm like, I don't know. I think Michael Keaton's talking to me, and I don't know what to say right now. I'm like, it's good. And then he's like, and he walks away. That's all he said. But yeah, that was that. And then the other one was last year on Lady in the Lake, and maybe it's a little too fresh, but there was a background, or like I don't think it was a stand-in. I think it was a background actor who was like local and owned a horse. And he knew we were filming one day, and he brought his horse to set. And we're in Baltimore, the city, so like that you can already kind of picture what's going on there. And so the horse is like kind of across the street next to the set, and he's just standing there like, you know, looking cool. And our director hears that there's a horse near the set, and we're like an hour and a half behind.
On the horse?
He's standing next to the horse. Yeah. And she hears there's a horse on set, and she gets all excited. And yeah, we're like an hour and a half behind, so like definitely not the time to go talk to this horse. and like I'm sitting on the grip truck, hanging out waiting for something, and I just see her like running across the street and get on the horse. And I'm like taking a picture of her getting on the horse, and then like half of the AD team comes out and is like, what are you doing right now? Like, get your ass back in here. And she's like, oh, sorry, just, you know, I need to get on the horse. So that was a very interesting, that whole show was a lot of days like that.
Background have to be the most interesting people, and have like probably the minimum requirements. Like, we need you to be a person, all right? Like, you don't need any particular skill. I need you to be a person here.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, the people that show up that can like devote 12, 14 hours to just like be a person. It's normally an interesting bunch of people.
Yeah.
I'll throw out one thing. Probably shouldn't even say this, especially it'll hurt my career. But I've had the theory for years that if you're next to camera, because if you think of concentric rings, there's the talent, and the further you get away from them, they're not necessarily interacting with you, and they determine whether the interaction happens. So some people are like completely cool. They walk up to catering, and then suddenly they're laughing, and they're on a first name basis, like, wow. But sometimes you get talent in front of the camera, and they just come in, they don't know who you are. I've honestly had this feeling that they're putting energy towards the camera. So the thing is, the closer you are to camera, hopefully there's been an introduction or something. So years back, I was doing a piece for the Kennedy Center. So it was going to be this orientation video that plays, and I'm kind of in awe. It's like, wow, this is a pretty official building, you know. And I'm shooting it, and Caroline Kennedy is going to be air spokesperson for part of the video. So I'm like, wow, she's been around politics forever. She's a pretty big deal. They've got her own makeup person to make sure. So she hasn't really interacted with the crew. She gets brought out. And she's obviously a lot of people that are doing stuff where they're celebrities or, actors are not there in their own head. So you kind of want to read, like, this is not the time to go up and talk to them. Let them do what they need to do to get processed for the shot. And we were shooting 16 millimeter, so I was pretty meticulous with meter and light. And I walk up, and I haven't really met her at this point, no introduction. She's standing there. She understands that I'm going to take light meter readings. And I said, if you don't mind, I'm going to she can. And she's cautiously doing this, and I don't even know why I did it, but I took my light meter, and just to break the tension, I went to her nose and went, boink. And for a moment, she just goes, and then the moment later, it's like, man, there might be Secret Service protection involved. Like, I should not have done this. And she just looked at me and goes, and I said, I'm sorry, I'm Steven. I'm just probably not a good introduction. And she just sort of laughs half-heartedly and goes, okay, I go back to camera. And I'm like, just wanting to disappear at this point. But she kind of cracked up a little bit. And I was like, okay, to this day, I don't know whether it's right move or not. I didn't get fired. It seemed like she did well. I wouldn't recommend this, but it sort of worked out. So I think but I think that is a big thing for everybody, is that personally, I understand that they're in their game, that the actors are coming from a whole different thing from everybody else. And sometimes they want to be by themselves, but then sometimes I think it actually helps that 50 people staring at them are all supporting them. Yeah. And I'm a huge believer that energy can be directed, and that you can feel negative energy, and if you are in a really bad mood and you're not necessary, maybe you drift further back away from camera, because that little orb, that's where everything's happening. Everything else supports that little area right there.
When we were working on Turn, the gentleman that played George Washington was an actor named Ian Kahn. Really nice guy, but again, Grip Electric, we don't have to talk to talent. So at that point, I hadn't. And then this was about the time when Hamilton came about, right? And so he posts online a picture of him, Chris Jackson, who played George Washington in the original cast for Hamilton, and Tony Kornheiser, the former sports columnist here in DC. And I just saw him in the hallway, and I just couldn't control myself. I was like, dude, you got to tell me the story of this picture. And he's in costume. He's like, yes, I'd love to tell you the story. I can't do it right now. I'm about to go do this thing. But like, next time when I'm not like need to be in my headspace, like I'll tell you the story. So then like a season goes by, and we're doing something out at the farm, and he's just riding a horse. And he comes and finds me. He's like, today's the day I'm going to tell you this story.
Wow.
And he just like sits me down. He's like, and tells the whole story of how he like was a huge fan of Tony Kornheiser and got an introduction. And they went and saw Hamilton together, and it was awesome. So you just like, it was just a good lesson of like, we see things sometimes that actors do, and that out of context might, could be bad in and of themselves, like are always bad. But there's other things that just like erratic behavior that like I don't know what headspace he or she is in. Like and so try to be as forgiving as possible, because that they have their process. I have my process for how I do my work. Like I don't want them to come tell me how to run cable. So yeah.
All right, so before we end this, who wants to choose or pick out the ticket for the raffle?
I'll do it.
All right. You're gonna say the number too?
Oh, what?
Or are you gonna read
I don't
the
know. Sure.
Yeah,
I'll read
the
whatever's
number.
on here.
Yeah.
You get a drum roll.
There we go, ticket. All right, here we go. Ticket 3987813.
Winner, winner.
We have a winner.
First time winning?
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I'd get one of
What a
those.
seat to win in dead center.
Wait, did we get
Right in the
tickets?
middle of it.
I don't think so.
I want a bag.
Yeah, what's mine say? We got tickets.
Just we can end with everyone. Just how can we find you? How can we find you right now?
You can hire me. Yeah.
Yeah, get my number right now.
Email jeremyponafala@gmail.com. I'm generally around. Feel free to hit me up.
I got jm4187@yahoo.com. And you could look up Photon Grip and Electric. That's my rental company.
I co-own Motivated Light, which is my company that manages my gear. If you Google search my name, I am one of 3 Taylor races that I've found in the country. So, and I'm the only male, so that helps narrow it down. So yeah, Google.
You can find me out there on the streets. Email lauren.kimberly.scott@gmail.com. That's what I got.
I'm if you do Stephen Lyons cinematography, or the actual company name is Cinetique Images, and Cinetique is sort of like kinetic with a C. So I'm fairly findable with examples and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah,
Yeah, absolutely.
that's fun.